What do you think? Right? What do you think about that? What do you think about the next 6 months, next year? What do you think about how people are now coming in? What do you think about the infight? How do we stop it? What's your take on the whole deal and my theory about how it was easy and it's not so easy? And when it's not so easy, you get a little bit of this.
I think you are spot on. I mean, I think it's no coincidence that the level of negativity and drama in the hobby rose as prices were falling. The hobby was easy money for a couple of years, like 2018, 2019, especially 2019 and 2020, and on into early 2021. The hobby was easy money. You could pick pretty much any card, and it was going to go up. And then, it really peaked out in February of 2021. And then we saw a pretty significant slide backwards, not with every type of card, but with the majority of cards, over the course of, most of the rest of 2021. And yeah, I think people got grumpy. I mean, there were people that lost money. There were people that, that were content creators, yourself excluded, but some content creators stopped posting as often because there just wasn't like the, what are going to be the hot cards this next month. Like when it became for a while, it became almost impossible to flip a card for profit. I mean, particularly like a base card, it became almost impossible. It didn't matter almost how good that player's performance was. The cards were still going down because of the overwhelming market pressure pushing things down. They might be going down less than another player's cards who's doing poorly, but they're still generally going down. And we saw that last year. I was amazed at the end of the baseball season. I looked at all of the price changes of all of the baseball cards throughout the course of the season. And there was only one player last baseball season whose cards were worth more at the end of the baseball season than the beginning of the baseball season. That one player, no surprise, was Shohei Ohtani. But even a guy like Vlad Guerrero Jr., who was close to winning the Triple Crown, late in the season, right? His cards actually went slightly down over the course of the season. I'm talking more his base cards, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure some of his higher end stuff probably did well, but his base cards actually slightly went down over the course of the season, despite him almost winning the Triple Crown. So yes, people are grumpy because of that. And then, as you said, negativity starts to take hold, drama starts to take hold. People start to talk about that. That starts to dominate the news cycles. But it had become too much. It had become too much because the hobby is meant to, in many ways, be something that is a distraction from the real world, be something that we can all enjoy, that we can all participate in. I see, when I turn on cable news, I see too much negativity and drama every single day on there, and so that's fine. Don't bring that into the thing that I do to escape that. And so when it was dominating our news cycle in the hobby the same way it dominates the regular news every day, I was just like, this is too much. It's too much.
It's supposed to be an escape, right? That's why we have this hobby. It's supposed to be an escape from that other crap.
Correct. And that's not to say that, it's important for people to understand that scams can happen and fake cards are a thing. And people do need to understand that so that they can protect themselves, but within limit. It doesn't need to be the central conversation every single day when you go on Instagram and that's all anyone is ever commenting on or liking or talking about. So hopefully we can get away from that. Without a doubt, if prices go back up, if the hobby has a good year this year, some of that will naturally work itself out, right? Because people will now become happier. And I will tell you, January was a really good month. There's a lot of different ways you can slice and dice and look at the data. But overall, I would say that January was the best month for the hobby. But if you go all the way back to somewhere between April and June of last year, January, depending on if you want to look at vintage or modern or high end or low end, January was the best month since somewhere between April and June of last year. So basically we saw a real uptick in January that we haven't seen for 6+ months. Now, whether that will continue, I don't know. There's a lot of outside factors, right? I mean, obviously NFTs have been just blazingly red hot in January as well. And last year, the card market was really hot in January as well, but that didn't last. I think overall, I'm still pretty optimistic about this year because I think a lot of the flipping easy money is now kind of out. And now I think you've got more of a firm base. And I think I think you can kind of build on that firm base. So I'm optimistic about a year of steady price growth without the crazy spike and then the crazy drop. But, it's a market. It's impossible to predict. And the market's becoming more and more complex every day as more and more people get into it and more people have knowledge about how it operates. The market's becoming smarter. And so it as a result of that, it's becoming a little more challenging to, predict and project exactly what's going to happen.
Yep. So I love having somebody on like you who's been through cycles. Like it's one of the few things that I bring to the table. Andrew brings the looks, the brains, the brawn. I mean, he brings out all the great stuff. One of the things I bring is that I actually
NBA
lived
knowledge.
through NBA knowledge. He watches the games, folks. He actually watches the games.
Well,
So
that's
anyway,
why all my Instagram arguments with people like Harden's so good. Harden's trash. If you watch him play, he's overweight and he can't do anything, and we don't want him in Philly.
but you're the best. You don't have to support the business. I'm giving it to you, man. You are the best. Like I don't even know why I'm here. I mean, but
I've hated on every NBA player this week. I'm kind of embarrassed with
But
myself. Sorry,
the point is you've been through cycles, and here's the fun. I want to know: are you A, B, or C? Kind of in the middle of these two. So I've told people for a while that we had that, as you said, 2018, 19, 20 period, and that filled in this humongous level of people who came in. You want to call them Gary Vee disciples? Fair. You want to call them people who are flippers? Fair. You want to people who chased easy money? Also fair. You just stated probably correctly, a lot of those flippers, a lot of those easy money people have left, right? A lot of them have, and I believe that to be true. Some have stayed, right? But what attracted that humongous amount of people to the hobby, what attracted the headlines, what attracted, the mainstream coverage of this stuff was the fact that so many people were coming in, and what they were chasing were outsized returns. They were chasing 10x on cards, 20x on cards. They were chasing things like LeBron Chrome base rookie being $1,000 card, maybe less. I mean, I remember buying them for $1,000 and going from $1,000 to $40,000. Obviously, it's come back down, but a 20, 30, 40x, Kobe, you name it. Like there were a lot of those, and flippers like to chase that stuff. They like to chase those crazy returns. We've seen the market over time. You're a chart guy. You make charts all the time. If you take a long enough chart, what you're going to see is a steady growth. Steady growth. And then, 18, 19, 20, you're going to see one of these. Like, the chart that goes up and then kind of comes back down. And what we're expecting is probably that steady growth. It wasn't steady growth for the last 20 years that brought these people to the hobby. It wasn't, right? Otherwise, they would have all been here already. It was that boom, right? I don't think there's another boom coming. I think, there might be, like any other markets, up, down, but I think the sports card market overall, and again, you could be in this camp or not, is generally speaking a boring market. It's something that, for the most part, will have regular returns. It goes up, but it is not a place, barring those little moments of time, year, 2 years, whatever it is, where you have these crazy spikes and the ability to arbitrage and make these crazy money. I don't think that comes back. I mean, I think the hobby is safe. I think it's great stuff. That to me, and this is the A, you tell me over there, we saw not just people come into the hobby, collectors come into the hobby, flippers come in. We saw a ton of business come into the hobby, a ton of money come into the hobby. So from Fanatics on the high end to these auction houses, people say the big four, there's 20 auction houses, there was 20 something grading companies. I don't know how many of them are out there. You had people building businesses on the backs of other businesses. Mark's Cards now bankrupt, Star Stock. I mean, all these other businesses that are not doing as well, you would think, as they were in the beginning. People getting funding, you name it. I think a lot of those companies and a lot of those people are in trouble. I do. I think that a lot of those companies that were here with money coming in 18, 19, and 20, if the market does what I think it's going to do, and it is steady up, and I don't think it's going to crash or anything like that, but it's steady up over time, they're not going to be here. Because they're built on this, wow, the card market is going to be this flip, this everybody in here betting and gambling and the whole deal. Do you see that? Or are you in the camp of, well, Fanatics is here. They spent billions of dollars. They're going to grow the base, and it's going to be a different base. It's not going to be this flipper base that look at a 10x. It's going to be a base that's happy to be part of it. And the 1x, 2x, 1.5, the 20% returns that you would get in a stock market are going to be good enough for those guys. Where do you go? Or are you a little combination of the two?
This is a really great question.
I have long questions.
Very
They're
long
good, but
questions.
they're very long.
It
They're
is good. I took
Very
notes here
long.
during the question just so I could make sure I understood all the parts.
Nice.
I
There
mean,
we
you
go.
are an attorney,
Jeff,
so I
that's it.
understand how this
used to
works.
kick off
I only have
episodes
one
with-
question for you in 27 parts.
This is where you've got the witness on the stand, and you have basically
Oh.
given your entire
That's
closing
it.
argument
That's it.
simply through asking the witness one question.
Yeah.
And the witness is now so confused,
Yeah.
they don't even know what to respond with, but you've already given the jury your entire closing
That's right.
argument.
That
So
question
you're
will be
good. You're good.
objected to, and the objection will be sustained. It's leading. I mean, there's so many different problems with that question in the court. But I think you get where I'm going. Obviously,
get where
you
you're
take it
going.
wherever you want. But you know,
Yes.
I mean, your thoughts. I'm not going to ask you what inning it is, man. But you know, it's a
I
legit
hate the
question.
inning analogy. I think the inning analogy is stupid. We can talk about that later. But yeah. So first of all, I agree that I do not think, at least in the near term, there will be another crazy spike. The spike is caused by the flood of flippers, as you said, and it's caused by flippers selling to other flippers, right? So what happened, especially as we look back, you know, in January and February of last year, was that rush for easy money. It was that fear of missing out. It was all of these flippers going, oh my gosh, I can turn this card around and make 10 times, you know, what I'm making on it today. A few months from now, flippers were selling to flippers. It wasn't flippers selling to collectors. It was flippers selling to flippers. The problem is that when you have flippers selling to flippers, a crash is inevitably coming because everybody's in it just to try to make the buck. And then all of a sudden you peak out where the flippers realize, wait a minute, there's no longer another flipper who's willing to pay more for this. So those flippers who bought it at the peak of the market are turning around looking, who do I give this to? Nobody wants it. So all of a sudden they get panicked and they'll give it to the next person down. And then that person gives it to the next person down, and that person sells it because they're all now trying to suddenly get out. And that's the behavior you saw in March and April and May and June as people are just selling cards and trying to get out, and you're seeing the prices drop as quickly as they went up. Finally, it got to a point where things started to stable out because you had enough collectors saying, well, that's a reasonable price for that card. You know, it wasn't reasonable when the LeBron Topps Chrome was at 40K, but, you know, 15K in PSA 10, maybe that's more believable. So we can start to play in the market a little bit more again at that price point, right? And so, you know, that's the first thought. When heat starts to build in the market again, I do not think you're going to see as many people do that flipper selling to flipper behavior because a lot of those people got burnt last time and they are going to not flood back in and want to do it again. I will say, I do think a lot of those people are in the NFT market right now, you know, flipping all these NFT projects. And I do think this same thing is going to happen into a lot of these NFT projects. I'm a big believer in NFTs, and don't get me wrong, we'll talk about that later. Like I'm a big believer. I own NFTs, but I do think you have to be real careful in the NFT market right now because a lot of that hype and speculation is immediately right there, just like it was in the sports card market last January. You know, I do think, though, that over the long run, I do think that Fanatics placing as big of a bet as they have placed, I'm very, very bullish about that. I do think they're going to be successful at pulling more people into the market that have not been collectors in the past because of their advertising reach, because of their marketing reach, and because of their association with the teams in the leagues. The fact that the leagues are now involved in this venture, I think you're going to see, you know, I think when you're watching Sunday Night Football 5 years from now and they introduce the starting lineup of the teams on Sunday Night Football, they're going to show their football card. And that's how they're going to introduce the starting lineup, right? I think you're going to see integration like that. And then that's going to just drive a lot more interest. So I'm excited about in the long run, whether we, you know, go through more peaks and valleys, I'm sure we will. But I do think, as you said, I do expect this year to be more steady growth, not the big spike. And honestly, that's healthier. Like that's what I want. Like steady growth is healthy for the market. It's healthy for all of us. It's not the spike and then the rapid fall is not healthy and it burns a lot of people. So I hope steady growth happens. I do agree that there were a lot of companies that were formed at the, you know, based upon economics around the spike. I do think a lot of them have seen revenue drop.